Welcome to the DNA Talks podcast, where we take on the mission of unlocking the code of your genetics. This season is all about you, upgrading your health, not just on the surface, but down to the root cause. Join us as your clinicians at the DNA company investigate your DNA and beyond. The intention of this podcast is to enhance your lifestyle by changing what is in your control. This does not substitute the medical advice given by your personal doctor, therapist, and other healthcare professionals.
Good afternoon, ladies.
Bonjour.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
How are you guys doing?
Awesome.
I am absolutely delightful.
Nice.
Too.
You are delightful.
Nice. You are delightful. That's true. All right. So I know that the reason I called us all here today. No. So I know that what we wanted to do is we want to answer the question, why the DNA company, right? And, I know that I get a lot of emails. I know you guys do as well. I've seen some of them. And people, ask some of the craziest questions. And so I want us to kind of have this conversation. And all three of you are practitioners with the entity. I always call you by your titles, but we're going to make this a little less formal. So I'm actually going to use your first names, okay? We all good with that?
Fancy. It hurts you more than it hurts us. I find this very amusing. This is going to hurt you more than us.
Yeah, it really will, because it's really awkward for me, right? Because, I'm a Scot, right? I was raised by militant fucking British parents. And, so you guys have titles and we have to use them. But Steph and I have been friends since God was a boy. So
Exactly.
it's kind of bizarre, right?
For the audience out there, Tracy's
we were this big, right?
For the audience, Tracy's going to swear a lot. And I highly encourage you to have a shot of kombucha or something every time she does.
Okay. What did you bring? Is drinking? Are we all? Yes.
Seeing, well, I it's not alcohol because I'm doing my best right now, but
Liar.
and Pellegrino with a shot of pomegranate juice. Nice glass. Look at the size of my hand and the size of the glass.
Yeah, keep telling us that. Keep telling us that, Lara. You and I both know. I saw you at the Christmas party. You can put some shit away. That's all I'm going to say. There are videos. If anybody wants to private message me, I will send them. So, okay. So, ladies, why the DNA company? One of the things that I hear all the time is, well, are you going to tell me where my family came from, or am I going to find out that I have a long lost sibling? No, I'm not telling you if your daddy was a big old hoe, because that's not my business, and I don't care, right? And if your people came from Azerbaijan, again, I don't care. Not one of you know where that is. And I don't care, right? I don't care. That doesn't matter. What does matter is what we can tell them, right? And what we can tell them is, how does their brain work? And specifically, how do they show up in life? How do they express themselves in life? How do they show up at work? If somebody pisses you off at work, are you going to sit and obsess over it? Or are you one of those people that has forgotten it 35 seconds after somebody, took the last roll of toilet paper? I mean, which end of the spectrum are you? And that's what our test tells people. Am I right, Krista? I mean, help me with that.
Yeah, no, I would offer, it tells us more than just that. But I think in particular, assessing how a person experiences and engages with the world is one of our strong points. In the sense of, we have those exacting genes that lend to, does the world piss you off quickly and easily? Or are you a little bit more someone who's chill and able just to ride the waves of annoyment, right? And I think, it's powerful stuff, right? In the day-to-day of how you're going to manage that, as well as just the normalization of, oh, it's not a failing of mine that everyone in this room pisses me off. It's just my DNA, right? Now that I know that, I can work with it. But absolutely, this is what we do. We support the day-to-day.
That's interesting. I actually never thought of it that way till you just said that.
Well,
thought about it which way?
That it's not really their fault per se that they are an asshole, but they were genetically made to be one, right? So that explains a lot about me. I found out now I have never really looked at my genetic report.
Oh Lord.
I glanced at it. I think it was on a screen a couple times. I know Dr. Kostroman tried to help me understand all of these things, and I proceeded to work through the entire conversation and go like this a lot. But are you guys shocked to find out that I make a lot of testosterone?
There's crickets and laughter, crickets and laughter.
Right? And that people can piss me off easily.
Shocking.
Shock. I was shocked by this. But I also
She
have
was shocked.
all of
No one
this
else was.
empathic shit that's in my genetic makeup. And I thought, you know what, that empathic stuff really does display in my life with my children. Right. So it was really interesting to me. So I looked at 4 pages, let's be honest. I didn't look beyond that, and I don't care. But the part that mattered to me was, holy shit, this stuff is right. We're on to something, which I think is fantastic from a business
what
perspective.
I find really interesting that I talk to people about is, when we're looking at, especially the mood and behavior aspect, tell them, hey guys, there is no good or bad profile. It's all based in the context of the situation. When I start walking them through, looking at the different genes, but being careful, because looking at just individual genes, I have to remind them this can present in a certain way, but it's just one player on the team. You can't play the game with just one player. So we have to zoom out and look at how all the players are working together. But when I start telling them about this, and then they're like, oh my gosh, yeah, this is why I did this, or why I felt this way, or why I was going through here. But they also see the flip side, the positive, the more some negative and positive aspects, again, depending on the context. And I'm finding, just like what Krista was saying, what it does is it helps them to realize, oh my gosh, I'm not broken. There's nothing wrong with me. This is just the way my genes are. And it puts them from being a passenger on the ship to being the captain, and realizing that they have the power to adjust and manipulate the context and how to use their genes in their favor. So, it's really empowering. And I've gotten a lot of feedback from my clients about that.
Yeah, no, that's really an interesting way to look at it.
Yeah.
A lot of people use a lot of personality tests, whether it's the Myers-Briggs or, whether people use astrology and go in depth into astrology. There's a lot there. Whether they go into, there's so many different personality tests, the Enneagram, and you get little pieces of information from all of them. But when somebody has said to me, gosh, your brain works so fast, you process so many details, you hold so much information, you're so positive, you're so driving, none of the personality tests really go into that. And when somebody says, why are you so positive? I'm like, I don't know, I was just born that way. Well, then you look inside the DNA and you see that I have the tendency to produce a lot of serotonin and it stays around. Oh, okay. Well, I might get my world rocked and I need to take a step back because I get overwhelmed, but then I can jump right back in. So I'm very good in emergency situations because I don't panic in them, I function in them. But then I also like to multitask, which people say is baloney. You can't multitask, it's just layering. And then it tells me that I have a tendency to ADD, but I don't have ADD, but I do like to have 3 or 4 things. So all of a sudden, it was the only place that put together, oh, there's my Myers-Briggs, there's my Enneagram, there's my astrology, there's my actual demonstration. And I was like, the one place that laid out all the tendencies, and you didn't have to grab it from 4 or 5 different pots. Likewise, I've done gene food, and I've done an athletic gene one, and I've done the history, the ancestry one, and all of those had a snippet, but we have longevity, and we have the foods, and we have the athletic, and we have the cardiovascular, and we have the brain, and so the reason I was drawn was it's like, okay, I can get more actionable steps and more aha moments that I can go, I get it. And what can I do about it? Because if it's working, great, but if it's not working, what can I do? Because a lot of them are fascinating. Okay, I can do this with my tongue. Okay, what good does it do me? I carry the gene that I can curl my tongue. Big flippin' deal, okay? Or right. So I had a gene one that says, can you do this? I'm like, yes, I can. Okay. But
You know we're all going to do this shit later. We're going to see if we can do this.
well, I can tell you there's somebody that I know that happens to be very happy about that I can do that. But other than that,
That's good.
a very special someone that is quite happy that I can do that. But other than that, I knew that before. I didn't have to have a gene test to figure that out. But I really love the actionable steps because I'm action driven. Theory is wonderful. How can I apply it? How can I apply it to my life? How can I check up on it? And how do I also know that just because, and I've gotten this a lot lately, I have familial history of cholesterol. I've got to get my cholesterol so low. We go in and see, okay, you have cardiovascular inflammation. Yes. Here are the actionable steps to lower. Here are the follow-up steps to make sure they're low. And if they're low and your tests are low, no, you're not going to drop over of a heart attack. Just because multiple members of your family did, here's all the things that they did that were different than what you're doing. And then you don't have to. And then, she goes to a cardiologist and the cardiologist says, how have you broken the pattern? Well, it's because we can see the shell, we can overlay it with lab tests and with lifestyle actions, and she gets the results. And they're just like, well, come back in a year and we'll see if you've maintained. Okay, well, great. She didn't have to be put on medicine. She didn't have to, whatever. And their mind is like, because they don't have people generally that are that motivated. Our crowd, the people that are attracted to what we do, they want to get shit done. So they love the actionable steps and they put them in place and then they do follow-ups to make sure they're in place. And if there's more they need to do, we can dig deeper.
Yeah, we don't have a lot of that passive patient behavior, right? Where they just kind of sit there and go, well, I'm at the effect of this shit because, somebody's a doctor and they said I had to do this and this, and I'm going to go do this and this. And, you kind of get what you're given, right?
Sure. I'd also offer though, we're really good at, and allow me to detail what I mean, but lazy medicine. Lazy medicine being, I don't want to have to do everything. I want to do what is smart. I want to do what gives me high ROI. And genes are so helpful in that. Because I think I'm a huge advocate for being healthy so you can be happy, not just being healthy. And if you're doing all the health things, there's no space for happy. And so we're really, really good at being like, cool, to Steph's point, like maybe there's a cardiovascular weakness. So let's focus more on that instead of something maybe in hormones, whatever it might be, right? It enables lazy medicine of putting energy and effort where it should be, as opposed to everywhere, which nowadays is exhausting because there's so much information. There's so many options on the internet that by itself can become someone's life. It can consume them if they're not careful.
And I think that's one of the reasons why people choose us over other genetic companies. And really, whether they realize it or not, it is because we interpret their genes in a functional way, a realistic, clinically relevant, actionable way. And there's the difference. We're not just saying, oh, yeah, you got a propensity to, 80% chance of getting Alzheimer's because your ApoE is a, 3-4 or something else or whatever. It's just like, okay, great. How do I fix that? And that's what we do. And that I have found has been so empowering, has been so wonderful. And I think that's why we have the people who are saying, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm putting action behind it. I'm all in because you're actually giving me something that makes sense that I can do about it. Not just going, sorry, too bad.
Well, and I love it that we have followed up, and I don't even think a lot of the audience is even aware of this yet. We've followed it up with a number of other diagnostics. So as a classically trained pharmacist, I've done PGX for years. For anybody who doesn't know what PGX is, it will go through and look at your DNA and it'll say in the cardiovascular category, which of the commonly prescribed drugs will work better or worse for you. Well, if we decide that, hey, you do have a cardiovascular risk, here are the naturopathic or the lifestyle things, and you and your physician or your prescriber decide, you know what, we still want some extra protection. Well, of the 7 drugs out there, do you want to hit or miss? Or do you want to laser in and go, well, this is the one that my gene profile says that I'll have the best time with, the fewest side effects, you know, maybe the most, whatever, and you can use a lower dose and get a bigger bang. Oh my gosh. I mean, how about we layer DNA and then we layer DNA and drugs, okay? Or whether it's DNA and let's catch a disease state early, 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 because most diagnostics are catching disease states when you're 70% or greater dysfunctional. Dis-ease, dysfunction. What if we can catch something at the 20 or 30% when it's micro and can be managed? And the fact that we now have all of these new tests that will be rolling out allows them to have a place where everything is bundled and concentric with a practitioner that says now and now, whether it's gut or brain or, you know, functional labs. I love that they don't have to put those pieces together, that we realized a need and we put the pieces together for them.
And I think we're really inviting people into the journey of new medicine, right? Medicine historically has been, okay, so we know if you have this disease, we can look for this thing that comes specifically from that disease. And that was great progress. Let's not belittle that. But the shift is because we have so much more exacting lab technique. We have incredible computing power, which is shifting medicine in mind-boggling ways. We're now able to do that stuff before it even becomes a thing because we can see those teeny tiny things that change before the disease. And so I think part of what we're doing in this suite of testing, to what Steph is saying, is that we're inviting people into a preventative space because we now have the technology to do that. We're now in a space where we can scan a body and with several different parameters or several different tests, truly assess where the person is at, if that makes sense. And that to me is just, I even think back 10 years ago, the thought that we would be here now is, I was expecting at least another 20, 30 years. It's incredible where we are in the space of prevention and truly knowing where the body is sitting in real time, as opposed to figuring that out 10 years later. Yeah.
I don't know if people understand how powerful you are. I mean, the fact that you have an IT background and then you had a passion for natural medicine and got a doctor of naturopathy. And then, so you're research based and natural based, but IT based. And so you and Laura are so good at dissecting where are our parameters now? Where are our, what can we test for? But then people probably don't know that it keeps evolving. You're able to add more genes and more dimensions and more layers, and people can go back and I don't know how far back, maybe you guys can clarify, and have the updated reports, you know, and that added insight, and they can do an episodic if they've gone through a program, but they go, hey, what are the new genes? Let's have a revisit and fine tune. I mean, I see very rarely do I see that happening in this space.
Yeah. Well, I would offer, and I see this in yourself, I see this in Lara, I see this new paradigm of medicine needs to be very humble to change in progress, right? Like, I think the conventional medicine system right now isn't able to change in progress, right? It's antiquated. It's the way they were trained into it, whatever it might be. But to your point, everything is changing every day. So for example, the way I interpret a gene today is slightly different than what I might have interpreted it 5 years ago because we have more data. And there has to be the humility, not necessarily if I was wrong. I offered you the best I knew at the time, but we know more now because we have the Laras of the world who are constantly digging into the research, because we have the Yous of the world who are so passionate about that application and boots on the ground. Bar none, you're so spectacular at that. We talk, you know, you share this publicly, so I don't feel like I'm bringing in something I don't need to, but you know, you talk about your cancer diagnosis as the best thing that ever happened to you because it opened up this world, right? instead of being like, cool, I guess this is where it's at, boots on the ground, you figured that out in profound and incredible ways. And there's that humility of medicine of things are different, things are changing. Let's be aware of that and let's leverage that instead of just accepting what is before us.
Yeah, I literally went to see a doctor just a few weeks ago, and I said, well, if you look at this gene report, and he goes, I don't do that. And I thought, you fucking moron. Do you understand that the majority of drugs being made right now, the injectable drugs in different classifications, whether it's RA or psoriatic arthritis or diabetes or any of those things, the majority of those drugs are gene based. That's how we got them. That's how we figured this shit out. What do you mean you don't know what that report means? I get we call it practicing medicine because nobody's gotten it down right, but they should have to have a certain amount of responsibility to stay abreast of what's new and what's relevant in their space. Like Krista just said, 5 years ago, she looked at a gene differently than we know it to be today. Well, we got from there to here with study and application and data and use cases and all of those things. And a lot of people don't look at it that way. You figure 80% of what we use a doctor for is episodic care. And that just happens to be true, right? So, but what about that other 20%? We have our new cancer test. We were talking to the director of the lab just a couple of days ago, and we're discussing the different systems of cancer, and it detects 17 systems up to 52 different types. And in that test, he said, Tracy, do you know that 70% of the people diagnosed with cancer right now have a type of cancer there's no test for? And I thought 70%. That's crazy. That's why people are still dying from something that at early detection do not have to.
And that's where the prevention comes in. And this is the incredible thing that we offer. It's not just a DNA company anymore. We don't just do DNA testing. We provide, a much more full spectrum of care. Not just that, but we spend the time with the client. We listen to them. And that is huge. When they feel heard, they are not dismissed or invalidated. Oh, well, your labs look fine. Oh, that's just your age. Get over it. Deal with it. It's like, no, you're not hearing me. Hear what I'm saying to you. And we do that. And that works into what Krista was saying about being humble and also having that growth mindset. We don't know everything. Science does not know everything. We have to keep that mindset of constantly learning, constantly expanding thought, thinking out of the box, and being open to changes of the paradigms and thoughts. And that's really where it is. It's that connection, and I really think that is one of the major differences of what we are doing to everybody else out there.
Yeah.
Well, look at what we just all went through. The entire world shut down. The entire world shut down. And during that process, there was a lot of people that died. There was a lot of people that got nothing. There was so much difference in how it expressed all over the world. But the whole world shut down at the same time because there was something that medical science to that moment did not know what to do about that particular thing. So again, it was about that. This is practice because we have to keep figuring out what we don't know. And for the whole world to come out and say, you know what? We don't know. We don't know. And everybody kind of sat there and went, holy shit. But during that, something very interesting happened from the business perspective. That's the only part that I do. From the business perspective, something very different happened. And in America, if you are a doctor in New York City and you have a patient who happens to be in California, you cannot treat that patient pre-pandemic. Now, I don't know about you, but a cold is a cold is a cold. So if you get a cold and you are in New York and your doctor's in California, there's no reason you can't call him up and say, hey, here's my symptoms, right? Because that's what you would do if you were in his office. I don't have a temperature, because again, they would take that if you were in his office. I'm not having any difficulty breathing, so he doesn't have to worry about that, right? It's the same shit, just with a telephone in the middle. And before the pandemic, you were not allowed. And if you were caught as a practitioner, if you were caught communicating telemedicine across state lines, you could lose your license. And during that time, the administration came out and said, listen, we've got doctors right now that are shutting their practice. Everybody do what you can, right? And episodic care online almost entirely moved online. And the great thing about that was you could get your medications refilled, because for several months in 2020, people couldn't get heart medication, blood pressure medication, stuff that saved their life, they could not get. Because if I was calling Laura and Laura was in Florida and I'm in California, she's got to go, sorry, you do you, boo, but I can't help you. And that was it. It was basically, you are shit out of luck. So when we look at how science has changed, people still, as doctors, they still only have 7 minutes with you, Laura. They still only have 7 minutes. And if they don't keep moving through that system, the insurance companies for which they participate in are part of the network. And by the way, they get paid for every head in the bucket, not every head they see. Make sure you understand that. They get paid for every head. If they do not get through 10 to 12 people in an hour, they get shitty surveys. They get stuff from the insurance company that basically tells them they're a failure. And our patients come in, and I get these emails all the time. I spent an hour with Laura. I spent an hour with Stephanie. And it's the same. She listened to me. I told her everything that ever happened since fucking grade school, right? And in some cases, that is relevant. That entire history of their present illness is relevant, but nobody's listening to that. And when we increased our tech here and put everything into that one system, so if Laura sees a patient, but they need what Stephanie can do, we can let you guys collaborate and work, even though, Steph, you're in the South, Laura, you're in the Northeast. Everybody can still come together for the benefit of that core, and that core is that patient. And that patient gets that 360 care. And I think that is something that I think we do better than anyone else. I see these DNA companies, sequence DNA, some sequence company. And then there's another one, 4x4 or 2x4 or whatever it is. And they're all doing the same thing. They're using AI, they're using chatbots. They are not sitting, in most cases, sitting across from a patient, looking at that patient, saying, let's go through this. Here's, you had labs done. Let's go through that. They're not doing that. And that, I think, is part of the story that is us. Right, Krista?
I would also offer to that, I think as much as we're inviting people into the very important kind of science forward, medicine forward side of what medicine and healthcare is becoming, we're also, and I see this all the time between Lara and Steph, we're also inviting people to bring humanity back into the care. And what do I mean by that, right? It's not just a time thing. It's also this thing, I think, because of short visits and because of this idea that doctor knows and doctor tells you to do something and you just do it. You're not really a party to that decision making, right? By increasing that time and increasing the humanity and the care there. Additionally, what happens is if you come back and you're like, oh, you suggested this and I feel this way about it, in the sense of like, this happened, it doesn't really sit well in my body. That piece of information, which is not necessarily quantifiable, it's more a quality, it's a qualifiable thing. Our practitioners use that, right? Yesterday we did a webinar on BHRT, so looking at hormone supplementation, right? And one of Dr. Steph's points, which was so eloquently made, someone gets a prescription from their doctor and they're like, I don't know if I feel right about this. I'm having these things, but the doctor said this is the right amount based on my blood work because my blood work says I'm fine. Steph was like, you got to change that amount. If you're experiencing something that doesn't feel good, we have to adjust that. the humility and the invitation into this medicine, this new medicine, is not just incorporation of the blossoming of science and what we know more in science. It's the incorporation of the patient and their experience and their advocacy contributing to what is going on and how they're planning and supporting their health. I think.
Well, and in fact, I just got an email from that patient.
Yeah.
Right now while we're all sitting here. And basically it says, I want to thank you so much. And this is to you, Steph, for the call. It was so, right, elongated O, helpful. I love when people do that. And it goes on to say what happened. And then at the very end, it says, I would like to speak with you about working with you exclusively as my doctor. That right there is why you are who you are. That right there, you took that patient. I happen to know this patient. You took that patient who's a very, very successful human being who is really struggling. And in a split second, you listened to everything they had to say. You made appropriate adjustments because you're smart as hell. And now in less than 24 hours, they feel like $1 million and they don't want to talk to anybody but you anymore. Right?
You know, it's so funny because when we see clients and they say, I have coffee. Well, what kind of coffee? Coffee. No, what
The good
brand?
stuff. Coffee.
How much? What do you put in it? You know, and when, okay, so let's say they're dairy intolerant, but they're not doing a coconut oil or an MCT, but they're doing a dairy with high fructose corn syrup and artificial sweeteners. And we can look at their DNA and say, they don't detoxify. They don't handle seed oils well. They've got chronic inflammation and autoimmunity, and you go, okay, stop. Well, let's just stop with the first thing that goes in your mouth. First of all, we need to have some water so we can flush. Second of all, let's look at maybe some intermittent fasting. And then third, what if you put something real in there? Or what if you tried and they're like, never thought of that. Didn't know that was an option. Didn't, you know. And so to be able to break down those minute details, but the details that go from I'm feeding myself poison to I'm feeding something that my body can manage because I can see their DNA and because then they describe and you go, you know, and so you offer them an option that they can either take or not take. But as you said, to be able to affirm you're not crazy. I mean, when I got the cancer and they're like bone marrow transplant, girl in the plastic bubble for 3 months, you know, $1 million in medical debt. And I'm like, I'm too freaking cheap. I may not be Scotch Irish, but I'm Irish, you know, and I'm a Viking because I'm also, you know, so here's this Viking that says, I'm not going into $1 million worth of medical debt. So what other options? What other options? And finally, it was this conspiratorial, you don't need all this medicine. You need to change your diet. I didn't know diet had anything to do with how my body ran. And it was like, okay, well, help me with that. I don't do that. You know, find yourself some little nutritionist. Well, okay, I found that.
And nutritionists were looked down on back then.
They still are. They still are.
Are they really?
No.
And
I can't imagine that still being the case, but is it?
Yeah.
well, because there's such a broad range of nutritionists. You've got dietitians, and dietitians follow diets, ADA diet, American Heart Association diet. They're kind of macros. You know, and I have several dietitian friends, but they're like, I'm so hemmed in by the society that governs me. But that's the same thing for doctors. That's the same thing for nurse practitioners. If you don't follow the little guidelines, these narrow guidelines, and as you said, 7 minutes. Well, people say, well, they get 15. Well, 7 minutes is when they see you and they have to have an action. And 8 minutes, they're allowing themselves to do all the documentation so they actually get paid. Which is why there are fewer and fewer people going to medical school. We have doctor shortages. That's why we're having more allied, you know, practitioners that are taking over primary care because people are like, if I'm going to get this MD, I'm going to go into a subspecialty where I only see this little niche. And my friends who are medical doctors, they're like, here's my specialty. Anything else I refer out because I can get this in and out in 4 minutes. and make the same amount of time that I spend with you in 45. Now, I like you, you're a friend, I'll do that as a friend thing, but don't come every week. I'm like, I come twice a year. And they're like, and that's why I allow you to come. And I'm like, I'll pay you your full thing. You don't have to use the insurance because I only come twice a year. But the amazing thing is that they're so restricted. And then the dogma of you're not following the guideline. You're not doing this. We're going to pull your license. We're going to audit you. I mean, it's an abomination on what medicine should be, which is why people are choosing to go outside.
It is so unkind. Could you imagine going to a doctor and them being like, if you don't do this, it's your fault. It's your fault you're sick.
Well, that's why they fire them. Literally. Sorry? Okay, so one of my recent clients said, I'm not been feeling well and I can't lose the weight and my energy's gone. And she might have had a few gene therapy, which were called something else during the last 4 years. And she might have some chronic inflammation from that. And so she went to a cardiologist. And so the cardiologist is going through and the cardiologist says, you have long COVID. She goes, well, it started after I got the vaccine. And he goes, I didn't say that. And she goes, no, you said long COVID. And I'm telling you, it started after the vaccine. And he goes, no, get out of my office. He fired her on the spot for using the V word. And he said, I didn't bring it up. I didn't say it. I don't want to know about it, because he is being slammed. Don't talk about that there's issues. She's coming for help. So we're doing a spike protein detox. We have found her a new cardiologist that, will say, I'm seeing a rise in this. Some people had it, some people didn't. Some people got it from, maybe the gene therapy. Some people got it from the actual bug. But to not even be able to be so scared in your practice of anyone using a certain word that you can't say, well, we can't verify that. We'll enter that and look at it. He ended right then and there. He said, I can't work with you, and walked out. And she was like, I thought we were doing a history.
It really, here the doctor is firing the patient, but yet, you know what? The patients are the one paying the doctors. Okay, yeah, maybe through insurance and whatever else, but the doctor works for you. They are providing a paid service. So guess what? You can fire them. And I've had conversations, with friends, family, and even clients, not, me telling them, go fire your doctor, but saying, if they are not listening to you, if they are not doing what you would like as far as listening, communication, when you bring them new material and say, hey, look at this study, look at, and they're like, they totally dismiss, no, won't do this. And they won't even consider, why are you still having them provide service for you? Fire them. Go to another doctor who does. We have that.
Well, I tell people, interview them first. Go over, walk into the office. Do you like the feel of the office? Do the people that are sitting in the office, do you relate to them? Do these look like people you'd want to hang out with? Do you listen to hear how the staff talks to the patients? Get the paperwork, sit and read it, see if it makes sense, and see if it's going to feel good, because you want to have trust going there and whatever. And I'm real selective on who I refer people to for, things, but it really has to be somebody that I'm not embarrassed to have referred them to, because I want them to come back and go, gosh, I felt so heard, great ideas, and somebody who's not afraid to reach out and go, I think this, but I want to collaborate, because collaboration is critical for really good patient care.
I agree.
There is medicine in being heard and supported by your doctor. And it boggles my mind that this isn't part of the curriculum of, now that you're a doctor, here's how you treat. So there's this really neat study. I think it was done at Stanford a long time ago on undergrads, right? We recruit all undergrads to be our little guinea pigs. Coming up to exam time, people tend to get sick, right? They're stressed, they're immune, whatever's going on. So they took 2 groups of undergrads, all that presented with colds approximately during the time of exams. They went to the doctor, and the doctors had one of 2 protocols. Again, remember, it's the common cold, and according to conventional medicine, you just kind of rest and it goes away, right? So that was really, by and large, the same advice being given by the doctor. The difference between these 2 groups was one group of doctors said, okay, bed rest, soup, whatever, go away. The other group said the exact same thing, but at the end of that appointment, they said, wow, you're going into exams. It must be really rough to be sick in the midst of exams. So that was approximately the sentence they offered. People who were in that group where they got heard and compassion from their doctor recovered 30% quicker. According to conventional medicine, there's nothing you can do for a common cold, but that simple sentence of, ooh, you're going into a lot, 30% difference in these kids, right? To Steph's point, it's so important. You like your doctor, there's humanity within that office. This is part of medicine. This is part of future medicine that you can't deny. There is data. There is data. There's research, right? I offer data. I don't say that for like the audience's sake. I say this more to petition doctors who feel like it's not their role to offer this within the office space. If you're in medicine, unless maybe you're a surgeon in certain circumstances and then, go have fun, this is your job to be offering within. And as a patient, it is your job to be receiving. Yeah.
So, ladies, we're going to wrap up here, but I want to ask each of you a question, and I want to give each of you like 2 minutes to fire back a response. Are you guys ready?
I don't know if I
It
like
has
this.
nothing to do with any of you asking me for a raise.
I
answer
don't
is
know if
not
I
no.
like this. Everyone, the audience, you'll get to know Tracy. This is a dangerous thing we're agreeing to. Allons-y.
Hey. We're not talking about hormones here, so this has nothing to do with any of y'all's sex life, even though I know more than I probably should. Anyway, so the question is, girls, why the DNA company? Lara, why us? Why do you come to us if you're a patient?
Because of the information, the way that it is being given, the way that I could be heard and actually do something about it. And if I want to dive in and get nerdy, I'll get that. If I don't really give a shit about the science or the details, and it's like, just tell me what to do, I can get that. We are here for the clients, for what they need. Where else can you get that? I don't know of any.
You can't.
That's
No,
why.
you can't. Krista,
Mm-hmm.
why the DNA company? Why us?
Mm-hmm. So when I was at naturopathic school, I didn't totally fit in because I wasn't as woo-woo. Like I came from a computer science background, right? Very rigid against the woo. And then I went out and I trained with a medical doctor afterwards. So I kind of saw both ends of the extreme and I didn't fit into either. I was always kind of aware there needed to be a very intelligent and purposeful integration of both sides of medicine because they both offer it, right? The alt space isn't everything, just like the conventional space isn't everything, but the curation of the in-between, I'm not confident per se that's being done very well right now because it feels very adversarial between both camps, right? You hear the medical doctors of like, ooh, don't go over there, woo-woo is poo-poo. And then you hear sometimes the alt people saying like, oh, heaven forbid, here's all these conspiracies, right? And so I think what we are doing really well is kind of this intelligent curation of the intersection between, because that's truly where healthcare needs to sit. The combination of science and tech with humanity, with kind of the blueprint, the genes, right? The foundations of people's health. That's my 2 cents.
I love that. I think that's a great answer, but it's exactly the answer I expected from you. All right, Steph, what do you got?
You know what? I think the biggest thing for me is, or there are 3 things. One, actionable steps. You understand who, what, where, and why you are and what you can do about it. 2, you will truly be paired with a clinician that matches you. I mean, you've got a tech naturopath who's leading this cutting edge science. You've got a PhD. Laura's got more letters behind her name than any person I think I've ever met. You know, and she's so, if you are a brainiac, man, and you guys will just like sit in there and geek out on the whole thing. You've got Justin, who is so compassionate and yet so powerful. You've got AJ, you've got Lynn. I mean, it's just, they'll really match you with somebody that you will jive with. And if you don't, no harm, no foul, we'll move you around to somebody that you do, because we're really good at going, well, we thought we got it right, but if we didn't, we'll move it. I love that we're constantly getting better, constantly progressing, constantly adding to serve. There was something that was said the other day at a dinner that I was at was, keep our servant's towel dirty. And this was during a prayer and gratitude. And I'm like, say that again? Keep our servant's towel dirty. It was, let us serve more than we get. Whether you're washing your hands because you made a meal, whether you're washing someone's feet because they need you, whether you're wiping your brow because you've lifted something. This company is servant leadership based, and Trace, you're a basis of that. You expect us to serve our clients. We go above and beyond and around, to accommodate their schedules, to find solutions, to satisfy a need. All of us have dirty towels because we care so flippin' much that you get what you want and that it's what you paid for. So you leave feeling empowered to change your life. Because if you don't take personal responsibility for your health, I guarantee you, nobody else will. Not the insurance companies, not the drug companies, not your practitioners, So if not you, who? And if not us, then where are you going to find it all in one place? It's the D&O.
And if not now, when? Now is the time.
Right. Yeah. Well, ladies, thank you all very much for being here. I think that when our patients ask questions like, I've been everywhere, I feel like I'm at the end of my rope, what are you going to do differently? I'm just going to send them to this video and say, go take a look. You decide. You decide if the people that are talking to you in this space really are everything I say they are. And I'm so proud of all of you. We have such an amazing team, and the core team that helps with the infrastructure, and the people at the lab, and the people in fulfillment. We take a bit of a hit over. Well, 23andMe is like $4. I don't know how much they are, but they're like really cheap, right?
100 and change.
And they're doing these commercials that say, if they hadn't found this gene, I wouldn't be here today. You know what? If they're doing something and they're doing something great for you, you do you, boo. Okay? You go get that service. You go work with those people. But if you need a practitioner that's going to help you exact change, that's going to help you figure out what's authentic to you and make it not so that there's so much friction in everything that you have to do. So you don't feel like you're battling through to your longevity, but you're thriving through to your longevity, right? I think that's really our key, right? That's our secret sauce. And as a patient, we're not walking this on our own, right? As a patient, we've got somebody that's holding on and saying, listen, I'm right here. I got you. And I'm going to hold on to you until you can do this for yourself. And that's different. That's different than a chatbot that says, please select one of the 4 choices. You feel like shit today. You feel not so shitty today. You feel like complete pounded shit, or you're having a great day.
You just required 3 shots in that sentence.
There's a middle in there, right? There's a middle. And it's like what Krista said. There is a middle. I'm not the jumpstart your car with crystals person, right? That's not me. I'm never going to be that person. There's been shit that Stephanie has told me I've had to do, and I've looked at her and said, what? Okay, and I'm only going to say this one time, so play it back. You were right. There you go. Happy birthday.
I'm sorry. Did you
know what?
jumpstart?
That's another thing you've done.
Did you jumpstart your car? We need it on the record. Did you jumpstart your car with crystals?
Yes, she does. Yes, she does.
Wait a
Yes,
minute.
Steph, what is the one
Stop
more thing we
avoiding,
need to
Laura.
You also don't sell their data. Those big boys
No.
are selling data. That's how they do it so cheap. They get a little bit from you up front. In their releases, you don't know that they're selling your data, but you give it away, and they are selling your data, and you're being marketed. They're selling it to insurance companies so you can get higher rates. They're selling it to
And
people.
biobanks, Steph. The largest biobank right now is in the United Kingdom, and they are selling it to those biobanks.
Yeah.
And what are they doing with it? I mean, we don't know. There's not full disclosure,
Yeah.
right? We need some fucking transparency in healthcare, right? And we need something. Standard of care is not working for everybody. It works for 80% of the people out of 100 that only need a shot in their ass because they got BD, or they need an antibiotic because they got, chronic, I don't know, hepatitis or something. And I'm not a doctor, so I don't know shit about
Just
nothing.
throwing spaghetti at a wall.
I totally am right now. But that's the difference, right? That's the difference. We stop, we do the intake,
Yeah.
we listen to the information, we ask a ton of questions, we look at the data, and we say, here's what your data is supporting, here's what you're reporting. Now let's figure out a way to put this together to serve you.
Mm-hmm.
We are here to serve. We all are here to contribute to the greater good. That's why we're here.
Yeah.
So thank you all very much for spending so much time with me. Thank you, ladies.